Okay. So, Werner, I'm going to mute everybody for a moment, and then I'll unmute you so that you can happily chat away. Actually, I'm going to make you a co-host here so you can share your screen, and we'll get going here. So, 1 second, make co-host. Yes. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Werner. And I think that looking at the pictures that he shared with me the other day, I think people will find it fascinating to see how much of Anaheim was recreated board for board, stone for stone in Hong Kong, and then some of the changes that were made, or for a variety of reasons that Tom will help us explain at the end. So Werner.
There's this, hello. Thanks for introducing me. Thanks for letting me have an audience here and talk about a trip I took to Hong Kong Disneyland on March 18th, 2019. So what is that, 25 months ago, before this pandemic, before we knew any of this was going to happen. And I knew I wasn't going to be there very long. And so I took a whole bunch of pictures. And so you're going to see a whole bunch of pictures today, although not nearly as many as I actually took. There's a side of me that thinks that what I should do is just run the picture silently and let Tom explain what you're looking at. But I'm not going to do that to Tom, but I am going to be fascinated to hear what Tom says afterwards. Also, I will add right off the bat that I really liked Hong Kong Disneyland. So Tom, you don't have to worry that I'm going to go in there and trash everything, because I thought it was a wonderfully done park in many, many ways. So with that, I'm going to try to share the screen. And let's see, I need to have photos up. Okay, do we see a photo of a subway station?
No, it just says my albums.
That only says my albums?
That's all I'm seeing.
Because I went to full screen and I thought, no. Let's try this then. Go back to photos. I don't want, why do I have Chrome? Now what do you see?
You have to reshare your screen.
Oh, okay. Except it's still not filling the whole screen. It's not the way we did it on the technical run through, where it worked, and it worked during the technical run through, of course.
It was perfect.
Doesn't mean it has to actually work. Hit the wrong button again. Okay, let's go back to find Zoom. Share screen.
Okay, there, yeah, it's not full screen yet.
Now, if I press this green button, it should go full screen. Now, do you still see the picture?
Yes, it's working fine.
Now you've got a subway station filling the entire screen. Okay, sorry about the delay in starting here. So the way you get to Hong Kong Disneyland from the main parts of Hong Kong where all the hotels are is you take a subway, and then you get to take a little shuttle line, and that's what the next picture is going to show you. And the subway line the shuttle line looks a little different than regular Hong Kong subways, which tend to be very modern. Here, the station's still very modern. And by the way, it's above ground, so it's not really a subway at this point. And then you, inside, lots of other people are going to the park as well. You'll see also that the straps are a little different and the windows from the inside than a typical subway. And then we come to a station that also doesn't have the sleek modern look of a Hong Kong subway, but looks darn good. And we're going to go up the stairs where we are going to find what the outside of the station looks like. Again, a lot of really nice design work went into it. It's everything is done to be a nice style. You don't get dropped right at the entrance. You take this nice pathway that kind of goes off to the side first. You are welcomed. This was actually the most crowded part of the day, was arriving. When I saw the crowd, I was kind of afraid of what it was going to be like. Turned out that that most of the attractions were either walk-on or had very short waits. Very nice day. So welcome to Hong Kong Disneyland Resort. Did not go to any of the hotels or anything like that, just spent some time in the park. So if you're expecting to see pictures of all their beautiful hotels, you're not going to get them on this show here. Nice sculpture at the entrance. I'm sure people are still wondering how Mickey was possibly staying balanced up there on just on the water. It isn't falling off. Very nicely done. Got 2 tickets. I was actually there with my brother. That's a long story that I won't go into, why I happened to be in Hong Kong with my brother, with whom the last time I traveled with my brother, I think was 1967 at Expo 67. So it's been a while before, since I traveled with him. And now I started seeing why this looks kind of familiar. Aside from the fact that there's not an American flag flying at the top of the taller tower on the Main Street station, it sure looks a lot like a familiar building, doesn't it? And we give them our tickets. And now here you enter, but here you first will realize that they do have to cater to more than one language in Hong Kong, although if you speak English, you will do very well there. Before we go in though, let's start with the squiggle and take a look at what lands you're going to see and what order you're going to see them in. So we'll add some familiar features. This all looks familiar so far, right? Main Street USA, Tomorrowland, of course, Fantasyland, and what comes next? Well, Tom knows the answer. It's not Frontierland, it's Adventureland. So what you see in the upper corner there isn't the Rivers of America, it's the Rivers of Adventure. It's not nearly as big as the Rivers of America, and the train track is not nearly as long, and the area within the train track is not nearly as big as Disneyland. So, but they, and so when it opened, it was, I remember there was some criticism that there wasn't as much there as there should have been, but they've added some very nice additions, including a Toy Story Land, the first of the Toy Story lands. I guess there are now Toy Story lands at 3 other Disney parks. Mystic Point, which I think was actually the final one added, so I've got it in the wrong order here. And Grizzly Gulch, which is sort of Frontierland, only it really isn't. And you'll see some pictures of it and you'll see why I really like Grizzly Gulch. And just to make things symmetrical, Fantasyland and Tomorrowland actually do spill over the railroad track. And so it's not just, the park is not going to fall over to the side because of all the lands over on one side there. As we go underneath the railroad track, get attraction posters. They are attractions for obviously for what you see in Hong Kong Disneyland. Although I did not see any pink Dumbos. I didn't see any Dumbos at all. In fact, so I think that they were behind a construction wall for something else. They must have been in renovation when I happened to be there, because I have seen pictures of Dumbo at the park. And now, why doesn't it? Oh, it's okay, it's giving me this admit thing, and now it won't let me go to the next slide. There we go. Okay, so more posters on the other side. Iron Man Experience, we'll get to that in a minute. But first, let's spend a little time on Main Street USA. Train station for the other side, looks beautiful. Wanted to ride the train, but couldn't because it's temporarily suspended while I was there. Seems every Disney park I've been to lately, whether it was Disneyland while they were working on Star Wars Land, or Magic Kingdom Park while they're working on the Tron coaster ride. Railroads, if you like riding trains, the last few years have not been a good time to go to Disney parks for that. City Hall looks darn familiar. And by the way, you notice the stars and stripes there flying above City Hall. I didn't see closely enough if that was a current flag or if that was a banner like they have tons of on Main Street at Magic Kingdom, which is actually represents like the way the flag looked 120 years ago. Fire station. So Tom, I'll be interested later on to hear, did they take pictures of everything, or did they have the old blueprints and just convert them all to metric? Or it'll be interesting to hear. So now we start seeing, though, that just because things seem to look the same, they aren't necessarily the same. There is no great moments with Mr. Lincoln in the Opera House. There is the Art of Animation. And next door in the building that I consider to be the Bank of America building, although I guess it's now the Disney Gallery building, and here it's the J.C. Hench building. It's Animation Academy, where you can draw Disney characters. So they have the times showing of when so you actually get to pick. It seems in the, at every place else where I've ever seen the draw your own character, you just are surprised when you sit down and they say, well, today you're going to draw such and such. But here they give you the times. So I guess Goofy must be the most popular because he has the most times. Okay, so Main Street, very familiar, but all different signs. Here you get deliciously delectable delights. The Emporium looks beautiful and looks like what you expect the Emporium to look like. Bakery. And this looks, again, all the little details, wonderful stuff. A little girl here dressed as Snow White. And one of the first things I noticed that surprised me is that they actually have the bandstand in Town Square, which they also have at Disneyland Paris. But at Disneyland itself, the bandstand disappeared, I believe, before the park even opened, because apparently Walt didn't like how it changed the sight lines to the castle. But apparently, we don't have to listen to Walt anymore, I guess. I kind of like a bandstand in Town Square. Castle looks really familiar, Sleeping Beauty Castle, except for that giant crane above it, and you'll see more of that later. Also, the mountain in back of the castle looks a little unfamiliar. So here we have Marty's General Store, which in the building that I think of as the Wurlitzer building. Though I guess it's the Main Street Hotel now, is what the sign says at Disneyland in California, in honor of Marty Sklar, of course. Nice brick street, Main Street, USA, before they had a lot of bricks in Main Street in Disneyland, California. This was the only Main Street vehicle I saw. So if you're expecting lots of omnibuses and fire engines and everything else, all I saw was the one taxi cab. Here, let's see what's playing at the Main Street Cinema. Why, it's My Journeys with Duffy. That must be a wonderful movie, right? Let's go inside and see My Journeys with Duffy. Go past the ticket window, and it's a retail store selling Duffy merchandise inside. But at least they do a few fun things, such as, and I didn't buy one, by the way, while I was there. But the cash registers are decorated to be the concession stand. So I thought that was a nice touch. And lots of Duffy merchandise. Apparently Duffy must be big in Hong Kong as well as in Tokyo. I don't think Duffy ever caught on as well in the US parks. And here we have the Market House, or as I think of it, Swift's Premium Market House, where they sell coffee. Of course, that's now Starbucks in California. So let's go inside. Yep, they are selling coffee there. And what kind of coffee are they selling? It's Starbucks, of course. This is a Disney park with Starbucks. More stars and stripes flying high above. Still can't make out how many stars are on that one though. Where we in California have the Carnation outside cafe, they've put in a Victorian collection arcade, which I don't know. I guess it provides more retail space, and it looks. I don't like the one that they did in Florida. This one looks a little better than the one in Florida to me, at least. So here we are inside, more merchandise. So the storefronts look very familiar. The signs do not necessarily look familiar, though. Pandora. And here's the Penny Arcade, right? No, it's the Centennial Hall. And the Crystal Arcade, oh, no, it's the Carriage House. And on the, the balcony, the Hollywood Maxwell lingerie store balcony, as it was in 1955 in Disneyland, it's a place to meet Chip and Dale, and apparently they're popular there because there was a line every time I walked by there. No window here for Rolly Crump, though, unlike the one in California where his window now is very prominent. The INA Carefree Corner, or the Nikon camera store, depending how you want to look at it, is now the Corner Cafe with another arcade, or I guess that's seating for the Corner Cafe next to it, enclosed seating. Coke Corner is Main Street Sweets. I guess we did already see a picture for the Delectable Delights earlier. these flowers, I don't know, they didn't quite look real, at least the sunflowers. Maybe they were, I didn't climb to find out. And of course they have the music, and I mean, it's a nice main street. Didn't have much time, so I didn't go in all the stores to see if there was actually more variety. I suspect it's a lot of Disney character merchandise, as it seems to be in every main street now. We have the Plaza Inn, where the Plaza Inn should be. And now we try to go to the castle, and we can't get to the castle because magic is happening. The magic that's happening is it's going to be transformed, which it has been by now, into the Castle of Magical Dreams. So they got two of the Disney words in there, magical and dreams. And it's really, really, really tall now, as you'll see in a minute. But to keep guests like me happy and have nice Instagrammable photo opportunities, they had a lot of Disney character tableaus in front of the construction wall, did a nice job with it, and posters. And we got the Lion King and Pumbaa there. And so now we get to Tomorrowland. Now Tomorrowland is undergoing a transition. It was already, apparently it looked like a fairly small Tomorrowland to begin with. If you're expecting a submarine lagoon or anything like that, there was nothing like that there. And now a big chunk of it is becoming Stark Expo, kind of a Marvel land instead. And that's partially done, as you'll see in a minute. But at least we have a nice looking Space Mountain, and then in front of us, the Orbitron, which we'll get to in a minute. Space Mountain, a little different there at the top, and the mountains in the background look frame it nicely with the trees. The entrance to, in this case, Hyperspace Mountain looks quite different than what I would have expected. I like it. And then also in the base, you've got the Space Traders, Star Wars surplus. Surplus, by the way, does not mean inexpensive or that they're closing things out. It just is theming that it's Star Wars surplus. And then a place where you can get your pictures taken with Star Wars characters, all in the base of Space Mountain. And then also at the base of Space Mountain, we have two drummers dressed up as janitors, making a racket. And I don't know, some people think that's fun. Some people think it's no, it's up to you. Inside, lots of Star Wars merchandise, including BB-8 mugs and Star Wars chopsticks. After all, this is Hong Kong, so a nice selection of chopsticks. Now let's go look at the Orbitron on the ground. What's nice about this Orbitron is they're actually like little flying saucers. So instead of being these little rocket jets that we're accustomed to at other Disney parks, they look like flying saucers, which I kind of enjoyed. And at the base, by the way, I had a whole bunch of pictures of these Easter eggs because I was there right before Easter. And I ended up taking them out of the slideshow because I had to go from 1,000 slides down to fewer than 300. And so that's why we're still going through pretty quickly there. This is the Starliner, is it kitchen or cafe? I can't read it on the picture right now. So we're obviously Tomorrowland, but then as we turn around to facing the other direction, Tomorrowland is becoming Stark Expo. So we've got the Expo shop, and in the background, we'll get to that in a minute and see that that's not Buzz Lightyear anymore. So the shop up here, you'll notice, I'll go back to the previous picture. It's a giant video screen and it's constantly changing what it shows you. So it's colorful and kind of fun. And in the background there, you can see the Iron Man experience. Let's go closer. Yep. So this was actually the first attraction that we headed to, and very nicely done. So I think it's on the other side of the railroad track because it looked like you're going under the railroad track. So there were more posters. So here we go in. Inside, they have terrific exhibits. I mean, they keep you very entertained while waiting in line. Not that we had to wait very long, but this whole timeline of Tony Stark's, milestones in his amazing career, and various switchbacks, of course, that went quickly. exhibits of old Iron Man suits and again, various milestones. This is the single lane prototype, single lone prototype allowed Tony Stark to access. Well, anyway, so you get these all these things, sort of like visiting a museum before you go in. Nice use of technology, projection technology. And now it's your turn to fly. So you're going to be flying in something called a Stark Expo Iron Wing. Now that's, let's see what that is in a minute here. You can say pick up your Stark Vision glasses. And of course you have the warnings. You must be sober to ride. So that's important. So not that they sell alcohol in the park, but still you must be sober to ride. And then you get, if this looks like it might be a lot like Star Wars, if you guess that, you're right. It's a lot like Star Wars. And then they've got the little pre-show, the little safety film with a nice cameo by Stan Lee. And then you go in where photography is not allowed and there will be no pictures. So this is actually a model before I went in of what your Iron Wing looks like. And if it looks a lot again like like it has a similar form factor to Star Wars, Star Tours vehicle, it's because it's the same type of simulator. There's no animatronic in it this time. But what's really nice about the film, I'll talk about it for just a minute, is it starts at Hong Kong Disneyland. So you kind of take off over the Sleeping Beauty castle. I don't know if they've updated it for the new castle. I assume they have. And then you fly over to the main part of where all the high rises are. And of course, the highest one of all is Stark Tower, Hong Kong. And then all sorts of things are happening on the streets of Hong Kong where you go down low and there's this Hydra attack and somehow, and of course, you as the park guest somehow get thanked at the end for helping stop it. Although I really didn't feel I did anything to stop it except sit there and anyway, so now the next attraction in the Marvel universe at Hong Kong Disneyland is Ant-Man and the Wasp Nano Battle. Now, I told you we were there on March 18th. It was scheduled to open on March 31st. And it's like, oh boy, they're going to have soft openings. I'm going to be the first kid on my block to get to see Ant-Man and the Wasp Nano Battle. Nope, it was not open yet. I guess it actually had its soft opening, I found out later, on March 28th and then opened March 31st. So I missed it. I was already back in Chicagoland before it opened. It's the old Buzz Lightyear ride. So they redecorated the building, used the track, used the vehicle, used the gun blasters, repainted the vehicles, of course, changed all the scenery entirely. You are now, instead of being shrunk to the size of a toy, you are shrunk to the size of an ant, or maybe to the size of a wasp, I'm not sure. And you go through and get your points that way. So yeah, this is where I should have talked about how your mission begins, but not for me. And you must be sober and in good health to ride this ride. The other one you just had to be sober. This one in good health as well. Of course, we have a gift shop between the two attractions. Now there's another big attraction coming. E-ticket, Avengers Quinjet, taking where the Autopia used to be on the other side of the railroad track. And one person's trying to tell me the Autopia is coming back. I don't think so. I think that already has all been flattened for the attraction. I guess we'll find out when it opens. Now we're back to the regular Tomorrowland part of Tomorrowland here with the what is it, Comet Cafe? I can't read it. And that finishes our little trip to Tomorrowland. Moving right along so we can get through this in an hour. Next land we're going to go to is Fantasyland, as promised. So there are things here that are familiar, but now the whole land starts looking a little more different than California. It's no longer the California park, except Sleeping Beauty Castle was extremely similar before they started changing it. Mickey's Wondrous Book is a big theater show that I didn't have time to see. I guess you can see the video of it on YouTube, which I still haven't done either. So here we are in the Storybook Theater. So it's one of these big stage shows with a bunch of Disney characters. Then we've got Mad Hatter teacups, where the teacups look a lot more, oh, should be sober and in good health, because we don't want all these drunk people riding these rides here. And if it looks a lot more like the one in Florida because of the roof over it, I guess that makes sense. Because no, they don't have a California drought there, as far as I know. Overall, though, nice trees, a lot of the tournament style that we're still familiar with from parts of Magic Kingdom's Fantasyland, and especially that we're used to from the old pre-new Fantasyland, pre-1983 version of Fantasyland. Balloon guy, it's something I don't know if I've ever seen a balloon guy at a Disney park in the United States or Europe. Nice gardens or with the decorations. Of course, we have the carousel. Move a little closer with all the white horses. And there you can get more of a taste of the tournament style architecture. And this is what it looks like from the Fantasyland side, looking at the castle. So what happened here? I just went into screensaver mode. Are you guys seeing a screensaver?
No, it's still saying the castle and Pooh Corner.
Well, that was weird. I guess I'm not moving the screen enough or something. The joy of screen sharing. Okay, big crane there.
Yeah, there's the crane.
Now, I think the next picture, oh, yeah, okay, we have some more construction here, people working on it. And again, magic is happening. And what is that magic? The magic is this. I did not take this picture. I would have had to wait a long time. This is a publicity picture from this year showing what the finished castle looks like. All sorts of architectural styles in it representing different Disney fairy tales. But if you look closely, you can see the old Sleeping Beauty castle is still there. So this is kind of built behind it, and even saying on top of it, visually it's on top of it when viewed from the Main Street side, from the hub side, but it's actually behind it. So it's this big new castle that, I don't know, I like the old one. On the other hand, I guess it's kind of nice that Anaheim has the only real true Sleeping Beauty castle. This was a kind of a pleasant surprise. It's called the Fairy Tale Forest. It proves that not all attractions have to be big, giant e-ticket, amazing attractions. They can be something as simple as going in, and we'll go in there. There's these little dioramas, and each of the dioramas has a hand crank. And when you crank it, something happens. And it's just very nice the way it works. So you can see different screens. So this guy is turning the hand crank. And if you look up at the Beauty and the Beast castle up above, you'll see that the side of it has opened up. What you can't see is now the Beauty and the Beast are dancing. And when he stops turning it, the door will close again. And that's the end of that little interactive activity. But there's a bunch of these little interactive activities, beautiful landscaping, very nice garden. It wasn't a crowded day, so there weren't lines. And I have to admit, I kind of enjoyed turning these cranks myself. It wasn't just for little kids. Trying to, there we go. Oh, I do. I guess there is, you can see Beauty and the Beast there. I didn't think I left that picture in. So here we have Rapunzel's tower. You turn the crank and you see Rapunzel and her hair bringing Flynn Rider up. So good use of turning a crank. In some ways, it reminds me of Storybook Land, except instead of a boat ride, it's an interactive walk-through garden. Nice idea, nice execution. And there's Mickey's PhilharMagic, which I guess they've dusted off Mickey's PhilharMagic for just about every Disney park now, it seems, or at least every Disney geography, every Disney destination. Maybe not, but it is fun. I actually saw it again in ye old Fantasyland concert hall. What's fun always are all these nice details, all these nice designs that, in another park, this could just be a blank wall, right? But at Disney, everything is painted with a lovely detail, great execution. We're waiting for the doors to open. looking at the various posters, going in, and then it's the familiar proscenium. Toilets, that's just, I know we like to use the word restrooms in the United States, but much of the English speaking world calls it toilets, so why not? Hey, had a fast pass, not that I needed it, but had a fast pass for Winnie the Pooh. And it's the Florida version of Winnie the Pooh with the old Florida version of the facade before, Florida got this, this fancy new interactive facade, and it completely different signage, completely different exterior. But you can go to Yester Magic Kingdom by going to Hong Kong Disneyland and going to this version of it. This, by the way, was the only, well, I was about to say the only dark ride. There's also It's a Small World, which I guess technically could be considered a dark ride as well. But if you're looking for Mr. Toad and Pinocchio and any of those sorts of things, you won't find them in Hong Kong. And again, same ride that if you've been in the one in Florida. And the end, where it's all the book metaphor that you're going into the book and into the various scenes of the book. And at the end, the book says the end. And guess what? There's a giant Winnie the Pooh gift shop at the end. I wonder how, just like in Florida. Merlin's Magic Shop. Interesting that this is not the tournament style, that they do throw in some nice, the European storybook style as well. But all pleasant, beautiful landscaping. For It's a Small World, I mean, It's a Small World in California is on the other side of the railroad track, but here even the facade is on the other side of the railroad track. So you walk underneath the track, come to the attraction. The load area is inside, not outside. Again, I assume that's interest of climate and rain and such. They do have the nice clock. They have the pastel colors rather than the color palette that's used in California. We're familiar with this, right? And then Small World ice cream next to Small World, mimicking the style of the ride facade to a small degree. Fantasy Gardens. I think earlier one of the pictures I showed you was part of Fantasy Gardens. Like this. Listed as an attraction in the attraction guide. It's nice, but I don't know if I'd call it an attraction. Then there was this construction wall, which I didn't quite understand. I think it might have actually been blocking Dumbo, but they are putting in a big new Arendelle section, which let's see, I think it's supposed to open I thought it was supposed to open this year or something like that. I don't know. It's probably all delayed. Probably not. So summer snow day in progress. This is not something you find in California at Fantasyland. Hey, more toilets. Banquet hall. They like food courts, apparently. And so the Royal Banquet Hall has, well, nice interior, international, Japan, grill. So, it's a food court where you have different types you like. Again, nice artwork though. Could have just been a plain wall, but everything is decorated nicely to give you a sense that you really are in a different time and place than in regular Hong Kong. Indoor seating, skylight. Nearby, there's the Festival of Foods, Clopan's Festival of Foods, with the great flavors of China: barbecue, noodles, and wok. Another food court. So traditional barbecue means like barbecue pork. It does not mean Texas barbecue. Shrimp wontons and dried shrimp rice noodle soup combo. Very nice execution on the Fantasyland station. It's like the one reminiscent kind of the short Pigs is Pigs about the guinea pigs, which is one of my favorite Disney shorts of all time. Also, I don't know, it harkens back to Casey Jr. in California. But of course, I couldn't get on the train because the train wasn't operating. So now we go to Adventureland. Very large adventure land, as you saw in the map at the beginning. Again, nice details. You know, this is not something they have to do. This is just something they do because it, you know, it doesn't make money directly, but it gives you that sense of place that just makes it so much more fun to go to a Disney park. And here, the Jungle River Cruise, they had an interesting predicament, which was it's such an important part of the Jungle Cruise that you get the skipper's narration. And so here you actually have 3 lines. By the way, you should be sober and in good health to ride, just so you know. And so you have a choice of getting into the English line, the Cantonese line, or the Mandarin line. And they're all nice short lines. It said 20 minutes, but I think we just walked right on pretty much. So not bad. If you looked at the map, you would think it's as big as the rivers of America, and the river, well, you will get wet. It is a wider river in places, but then it also narrows down, and well, we'll see a few more pictures to give you a little more of an idea of that. So you see how wide it is there. You see Tarzan's treehouse in the background, more on him later. Here's we're going by a Tarzan raft, more on that later. And our narrator speaking English. And you can see, you can sometimes be, the wider river, you're sometimes further away from some of the show scenes, but I don't know if I did a zoom lens here or if the boat got closer or both. Some of the familiar, beloved scenes from the Jungle Cruise. But there is a narrower spot then where you start going through the Cambodian temples on like this narrow little passage. And again, the landscaping again is just beautifully done. The gorillas in the camp scene, which we known from both parks in California. The African veldt doesn't look like a veldt as much as these animals have been standing still and subtropical plants have been growing up around them, and they're refusing to move because they're trapped by these subtropical plants. Speaking of trapped, here's the Trapped Safari, original version. Everyone paying a rapt attention. Where this version of the Jungle Cruise gets very different, spoiler alert, is that, oh, we still have the natives attacking here. At the end, where we have all sorts of exploding water and even fire. So it ends with fire and water. I had to think of Catastrophe Canyon when I came to this part of the attraction, but it's nice. It's a big climax to the attraction that the Jungle Cruise usually doesn't have. So again, here's a Jungle Cruise boat going by the Tarzan's Treehouse rafts. For Tarzan's Treehouse, it's listed in the attraction guide twice. The rafts is listed as an attraction, and then the treehouse is listed as an attraction. Now, the only way you can get to the treehouse is to take the raft, but hey, that way they can count one more attraction in Adventureland. So there's a treehouse looking much like the one in California, except that here it was never a Swiss Family. It was built as Tarzan's Treehouse with a larger suspension bridge. Didn't go to it, so can't tell you what the experience was. This is relatively new. It's a theater that they put in for a Moana show, and boy, was it a well done show. A homecoming celebration. So they can't, of course, and they didn't try to do the whole movie on a small stage, but they were able to tell the story with storytellers that dressed in the costumes, with dancing and a lot of fun and humor and talented performers. Got to say, this was actually surprisingly one of the real highlights of Hong Kong Disneyland. The young woman who played Moana was terrific. It was a real presence, and just really was able to project the character of Moana. And this guy, played everything from the chicken to Maui. Not that he's as big as Maui, but again, did a great job. I don't remember the significance of the large seashell, but I'm sure it made a lot of sense when I saw it. And so now next stop then is lunch. I had to eat at the Tahitian Terrace because I was a big fan of the old Tahitian Terrace at Disneyland before it became Aladdin's Oasis. And this is not really, this is basically, it's a Tahitian terrace in name only, not in decor and not in, well, to some degree, I suppose, in decor, and but certainly not in menu, but it was still fun. It was fun to be able to say, hey, I've eaten at the Tahitian terrace again. So here's the restaurant. Yeah, I guess it does have that South Seas style that the one in Disneyland had. So I think this, yeah, this is my lunch here. Chicken with rice. Everything is halal there. It's the halal restaurant in the park for visitors from Indonesia and other places where that's a significant choice in picking your meal. I think this was my brother's meal. No, none of the old tropical punch that they had in California, but I did manage to get some real fresh watermelon with mini on it as my beverage. They do the legend, or excuse me, the Festival of the Lion King from Disney's Animal Kingdom. Again, didn't have time to see that. Didn't work out with the schedule, or it wasn't running. I'm not sure. It says today's show times and it doesn't list any show times. I noticed on the poster on the left. That's probably why we didn't see it. Again, going under the railroad track. This happens to be from the Adventureland side, but now we're going to flip over to Toy Story Land, which you actually access initially from the Fantasyland side. So Toy Story Land, at first you think, well, it's going to be just like the one in Florida, except that it was the original. Nope, it has entirely different attractions, but it has that same look and feel. And again, I like Toy Story Land. I like it in Florida, and I've not been to the ones in France or in Shanghai. So here we have one of the entrances to it, slightly. And Ian, you are shrunk to the size of a toy, since you're no longer shrunk to the size of a toy over at Astro Blasters, or yeah, the Buzz Lightyear ride. Now, do they, in Hong Kong, do they know what Lincoln Logs are and everything? Now, that's something I wondered about when I saw some of these things, but I guess things get exported all over the world. The three attractions then are, first of all, is the Slinky Dog Spin. And you notice it's not Slinky Dog Dash. Slinky Dog Dash in Florida is a really fun roller coaster, you know, kind of an all ages, bigger than a kiddie coaster, not as ridiculously scary as these mega coasters that a lot of parks have put in. And all the rides here showed 40-minute wait times. Didn't go on any of them, so I can't say if those signs were correct. Oh, you should be sober, oh, and in good health to ride, good. Your choice of viewing or entering, but it looks like a roller coaster at first until and there's the same Slinky Dog type head, until you realize this is just something that goes around and around. It's basically a very nicely designed carnival ride. Then you've got the Toy Soldier parachute drop, which is again 40-minute wait. Nice, a lot of photo ops. I mean, Instagrammers' dream place, I guess. And it's one of these parachute drops, a little bigger than the Jumpin' Jellyfish at California Adventure, but still a family or kiddie ride, nothing terribly scary. Let your feet dangle. Yep, there they are, dangling feet. I don't know what they're looking at, but they're pointing to something interesting. Again, terrific photo, lots of photo opportunities. This was a clever idea. And more toilets in a build a cootie box. Oh, and some Easter eggs on top. Stroller parking, always. And the third ride is RC Racers, where the lighting just did not allow me to get a good picture of it. So was this the, this is the, I think this is the queue for it. So, okay. So anyway, that was our visit to, I mean, we missed the picture. I thought, oh, well, you didn't see the picture. What it is, it's what the RC Racer ride does is it's one of these shuttle coasters that goes forward up a ramp, and then it goes back down and a ramp to the back, and then it goes forward again and then backward again, and does that a few times until people want to get off, and then they can get off. Now we come to the most magnificent land. Well, I like the last two lands you're going to see. I both like both of them a lot. This is Mystic Point is the land. Mystic Manor is the attraction. They have this beautiful mansion here. It's a terrific ride. It is not the Haunted Mansion. I wouldn't even say it's a. Yeah, you ride through and there are special effects, but it's so different from the Haunted Mansion. It's not the Haunted Mansion supernatural. It's more magic supernatural. So here we go. We go to Mystic Manor. Walk on this ride. I mean, it's except for the time of going through the queue, there's really no wait at all. So we're going to enter. So this is Lord Henry Mystic and his monkey Albert, his mischievous monkey Albert. And if you've heard that people have said this is like the best Disney ride ever, yeah, I would go for that. I would agree with that. And I've been on Rise of the Resistance, and this is not of the scale of Rise of the Resistance, but boy, was this fun and quick and repeatable. It's the only attraction I went on twice, despite our very limited time at the park. So here on the left part of the SEA mythology, which I haven't quite figured out, this is Mary Ocean, Captain Mary Oceaneer, who also figures into various other, both on the cruise ship and in the parks as other roles, and Maestro Danny Elfman on the right, who did the terrific music for this attraction. I like that they have. I like this as a credit for the composer having his picture on the wall. Queue, again, very interesting. Lots of things to look at, lots of pictures, models, various other things. Showing Lord Henry Mystic in various different historic settings and then on his various travels to the far-flung corners of the world. Here with the Viking ship, and of course Albert is always with him, his trusty companion. Here you get a little sneak preview that you're going to see the collection of Lord Henry Mystic, including the Russian room and the Chinese room and so on. And the ride will go through all these different rooms and things will happen in these rooms. Your vehicle is the Mystic Magneto electric carriage. So it's a trackless vehicle. It moves smoothly and you're not exactly sure where it's going to be going. And it interacts to some degree with some of the other vehicles. Just again, it's all part of what makes this attraction just a lot of fun. So we're getting on the Mystic Magneto here. There's the Mystic Magneto in front of us. The plot is very nice and simple. It's not one of these things where you have to understand sort of an elaborate backstory. Lord Mystic has its new music box. Albert is not supposed to touch it, but Lord Mystic goes away. Albert touches it and things happen. And the things that happen are a lot of fun, use a lot of technology, but not just for technology's sake, but to tell a story, to entertain, to dazzle. And boy, do I wish I could go on it again right now and see it again. Don't know if I guess it's never been duplicated at any other park. Possibly because other parks have haunted mansions, but honestly, it's so different from the Haunted Mansion. I think it would do well at other parks as well. Great dimensional sets, animatronics, projections, laser lights, you name it, all sorts of different things happening. A lot of fun. And when it's all over, everything is sort of back to normal. Lord Mystic comes in and is glad that Albert didn't touch anything. Boy, was he fooled. Okay, again, sometimes it doesn't want me to go to the next slide. Here we go. And it exits through a gift shop. Next door is the Explorers Club. And I thought, oh boy, the Explorers Club. Here it's a restaurant. Oh, here it's closed because it was a slow day. And so I have no idea what's inside the Explorers Club. But I don't think it's the Explorers Club that people fondly remember from Pleasure Island. Next, we come to the final land, and I'm probably going through this a little faster than well, actually, I'm thinking I'm doing pretty well on time. The last land is Grizzly Gulch. So this makes up for the fact that there was no Frontierland to begin with. But the interesting thing is it doesn't look or feel like Frontierland. In a lot of ways, to me, it felt like Knott's Berry Farm. And that's a compliment coming from me because I really like um, ghost town in Knott's Berry Farm, and the whole look and feel of the place. And Grizzly Gulch kind of captures that feel. And so I thought it was terrific. I just sort of wanted to hang out there some more. And of course, time was limited, so we couldn't. But you can kind of see what I mean. Doesn't this almost look like something you'd see at Knott's? Not many attractions there. One big one though, which we'll get to in a minute. Your photo ops, you can have your kids stick their heads through the wanted posters, take their picture. There's the geyser something, I forget what it's called. It's listed as an attraction. It's basically a place where if you want to get wet, you can. If you want to just look at the geysers and such, you can do that too. Lots of, again, artwork, nice details, something I always appreciate. Music, and in the back, scales you can trust, the lucky nugget, highest, the biggest gold nugget found in the gulch. And this time we don't have toilets, we have a bathhouse, which of course are toilets. And again, that Knott's feel, as far as I'm concerned. So now we're going to come to Geyser Gulch. Yeah, that's the water attraction. Do you have to be sober for that one too? No, apparently not. Okay, well, good. Okay, so here, golden opportunity for if you couldn't go on any of the other attractions, you can get wet at Geyser Gulch. And so yeah, you can see where water is where the ground, where water is coming down there. You can see the streams of water coming. I don't know how well it comes across on Zoom, but so if you want to walk through like a car wash, you can do so. So now we come not to Big Thunder Mountain, but to Big Grizzly Mountain, runaway mine train, mine carts. And they're mine carts, and that way, because they're carts instead of a train, you don't need an engine. Nice lookout. Look at the bear at the top there. Sort of a little homage to California Adventure there, I would say. Only this one's not a California grizzly; he's a big grizzly. And you can see how the carts look. It does not look like Big Thunder Mountain because there's no locomotive and different color and it's just a different look and feel. Did not go on the attraction. There was no line. In fact, a lot of the trains were going by completely empty or with about 4 people in them. But beautiful rock work, beautiful landscaping on the rock work, very, very nicely done. And with that, we're getting very close to the end of these slides of the lands. And then it's going to be dusk and we're going to walk down Main Street. Oh yes, it's dusk now. So here we have the Plaza Inn. We're heading home. I would have liked to have stayed like till the bitter end and seen paint the night and taken pictures at night and such, but it was time to go. So let's say goodbye to Centennial Hall, the train station without a train, and so on. Goodbye Emporium. We did not go in and shop at the Emporium, although could have, right? Yeah. And with that, we go back outside. Mickey is still surfing. He never gets tired of it. Thank you for visiting. Guess we're going back to the train now. So now we all crowd back on the train. And that's the end of that. Now, if I may, I'm going to do a quick little commercial, and then I really want to hear what Tom and everybody else thinks about what you just saw. As Bill mentioned at the beginning of the call, I have been doing a website called yesterland.com for what'll soon be 26 years now. I guess I have to take down the 25-year banner, or I can do a magical 18-month celebration. I learned that from Disney. So maybe I'll do that. But anyway, there's something new every Friday, which actually means every Thursday evening. And new also sometimes means something brand new. And sometimes it just means that I dusted off something that I did 5 or 10 years ago and added some more stuff to it. But by now, I think there's like 600 articles. Most of them are about things that are gone or things that have changed. And so far, I'm still having fun with it. So I'm still adding new content on a regular basis. There's actually one, well, anyway, I won't talk too much about it, but I would like to invite you all to come visit. There's a link on the page. You can even send me an email. Email needs to have the word Yesterland though on the subject line, as it will explain, because otherwise my ruthless spam filter will ruthlessly filter it. And with that, I think that's the end of it. So I'm going to stop share. Okay. I'm no longer sharing, right?
No, you're no longer sharing. Hey, I got to tell you, I really enjoyed that. I work with an officer that has been at all the Disney parks. He tries to go to all of them each year, and he keeps talking about things like Mystic Manor and that sort of thing. And I had no clue what he was talking about until I saw that. So I thank you so much for doing it. And there were a number of comments in here we'll go through and we'll open it up. One thing that I had not realized, that somebody mentioned how there was no rails down the middle of Main Street because there's no, horse-drawn carriage.
Yeah.
So I like the look of the brick walkway down the middle of Main Street. That looked pretty nice. So questions, and of course, Tom, if you'd like to jump in there. If people want to ask a question, use the raise your hand button, and it will pop you up to the top corner of the screen. I can unmute you, or if you wave your hand frantically, we'll do the same. So questions for Tom?
Yeah.
Let me ask you, Tom.
Oh, which Tom? Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Tom Morris.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Tom, tell us about the gazebo, because I know that was a big thing for Disneyland, that, Walt didn't want the gazebo blocking the view down Main Street. How did it come about that you put a gazebo in Hong Kong?
Well, this is one of those things you've got to forensically go back in time and study and reconstruct. So without getting too long-winded about it, before I was that knowledgeable about any of the actual Disneyland rare history, Eddie Sato had, for Disneyland Paris, put the gazebo back in Town Square. And let me see if I can do a screen share here.
Yeah, I'll have to make you a co-host. Hang on 1 second. There you go. Should be able to share.
We discovered something. It was kind of a learning. Can you see it?
No, it's not
Yeah.
being shared yet. There you are.
So what we discovered with Disneyland Paris and the bandstand was that the bandstand really does not block the castle. Only if you're standing in a very confined cone of vision, which most people don't, as they come into the park. They either come in through the West Gate or the East Gate and go past City Hall or the Opera House. And the reveal of the castle is when you come around the corner of the Emporium, or the Wurlitzer building, let's call it. And boom, that's the first time you see the castle. Unless for some weird reason you walk from the City Hall side over to the Bank of America side, which nobody, does. I mean, why would you do that? Plus, I think from a cinematic standpoint, you want to save the reveal of the castle for that moment that I just talked about. When you come around the corner, you're not supposed to see the castle immediately. It's a reveal. Nevertheless, you can see the castle. If you happen to be standing in front of the bandstand, you can see it. So I thought that was an interesting risk that Eddie took on Disneyland Paris. And then years later, as I'm doing my historical research, it comes, I'm not 100% on this. I'm about 95% convinced after reading Ruth Shellhorn's diary and examining really kind of the facts of what was going on at Disneyland in May of '55, when the bandstand first came out and was put on blocks. They purposely set it on blocks so that Walt could look at it, but they were considering a bandstand for what was called the Root Beer Garden at that time, where Carnation Gardens ended up. For the first 2 years, it was just called Root Beer Garden, and they needed there was a bandstand called out for that location as well. So I think they were trying to kind of, they were up against time and schedule and money. And so instead of 2 bandstands, they had 1 bandstand, and they had to choose which location. And it made more sense to put it in the root beer garden because there'd be nothing to look at in the root beer garden if the bandstand wasn't there. In addition, in Ruth Shellhorn's diary, she mentions Dick Irvine not liking it in the location of Town Square and that it was out of scale. Now, the story has come even from Ruth Shellhorn years or decades later that Walt didn't like it because it blocked the castle. But I think that is faulty memory. You know, it's one of those stories like the water draining from the rivers of America, which is not true, and the colorblind bulldozed driver who bulldozed all the wrong trees, which is only very partly true. It's just become one of those stories, those myths. So I don't have a picture of the bandstand in this same shot from Hong Kong, but it was definitely planned out and studied with sight lines. And I think it's a nice little ornament. We can't put an American flag in the center of Town Square there. So, you know, we had to put something, and it turned out to be a really nice meet and greet. But I also wanted to point out something that Werner missed, which is the Beacons building is there at Hong Kong Disneyland, which was one of my favorite buildings on Main Street. And I was very kind of sad, even though I was probably just a teenager when they took that out. But I made sure that we put it back into Hong Kong Disneyland. And I did kind of an old timey picture of myself going back in time, but that's actually Hong Kong Disneyland just a few years ago. And Werner asked about whether it was Main Street was reconstructed using the original drawings. Yes, all the original drawings exist. And surprisingly and shockingly, they were fairly up to code, up to Hong Kong's very stringent building codes. Because, you know, you might expect, because it was done at kind of 9/10 scale on the first floor, and that building codes have only gotten worse in the other direction. I think we only had to raise a few doorways a few inches. Otherwise, those drawings were beautifully detailed from 1955, and you can see the result of it, that they were able to, you know, almost perfectly reconstruct it. And in fact, there's portions of some of those buildings that they were in such a rush at Disneyland. They were supposed to be brick, and they just ran out of time and just made it stucco plaster. So there's a couple instances in Hong Kong where we went back to the original drawings, which were brick. One other thing that Werner missed was, if he had gone into the Plaza Inn, he would have found this really fun combination fusion, turn of the century Chinese American environment that we created in there. Steve Wilson, who I think might even be on this call, it was really the designer behind this and the person to thank for its beauty and how well it came out. And the lanterns change color, and there's Mulan artwork on the walls, and the music is kind of a fusion of American folk music played with Chinese instruments, or it's Chinese classic music played with American instrumentation. And it's just a little shot there of all the little magic lanterns that are in there. So that's just wanted to add those little pieces in there. And is Steve Wilson here?
Yeah,
Steve,
he's waving.
Steve there was the designer of that space. Every time I go there, I walk in there because it's one of my favorite places in the park.
That's very nice to hear. Thank you.
So anyway, you can barrage me now with questions about all the tomfoolery.
Well, we have a question coming in from Carolyn, who's also been over there a number of times. So Carolyn, fire away.
Well, Werner, thank you. That was like going back again. I wish I was there. And I took about as many pictures as you did. So one of the questions I have for the design is, before I went, I actually read a number of books about it. And I think it might have been Marty Sklar's book, but I can't remember. about the entryway to Disneyland Hong Kong and how it had to be designed so that you weren't going directly into the park. It kind of had to be curved because of some
Oh,
local belief system.
feng shui.
Feng shui. Yeah.
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 And fortunately, I was not really, I didn't have to be involved too much in that. The park designers really didn't have to be too involved in that. But yeah, the way that the park was oriented relative to east, west, north, south was a function of feng shui. So it's true. And there were some strange, odd things we had to do, like put a couple of very heavy, 2 or 3 ton boulders on the berm in certain places to hold the spirits down.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed is, there is a major international airport on the other side of that mountain.
Yeah.
And so it kind of breaks the fourth wall, if you will, when you're sitting there in Fantasyland and this giant jet takes off overhead. But
Yeah.
the other thing I wanted to say is the Mystic Point area had some of the most amazing little details that sometime I can share pictures of those, but just around every corner, there'd be a little keyhole viewing area or something in the gardens. And I was there during a typhoon. So I was there about 4 months after Werner was, and this big typhoon hit. So the first day they closed the park. So I'm sitting in the hotel. I stayed at the Hollywood Hotel. And then I went back, and most of the attractions were closed because of flooding. But sitting in that garden across from Mystic Manor, it was just magical in there because the water wasn't coming down through the trees. And it was also the only Disney park I've ever been to where I nearly had it to myself because there were maybe 2,000 people in the entire park. But it was so they did open up rides during the day as the day went by, but like the Grizzly Gulch, the mine train ride didn't open up. But I spent a lot of time in Mystic Manor. I went twice, I think 4 times through that.
One of the big things in Hong Kong are these monsoons that come through and dump, they can dump 8 inches of rain in 1 or 2 hours. And so the entire city has been brilliantly civilly engineered to handle that flow. And there were a lot of restrictions that we had, let me just put it that way, because of wind and because of rain. But you do get a bonus after the monsoon for several hours. You get all these waterfalls on the mountains behind the castle, behind Fantasyland. So it looks like, some amazing valley high, kind of a moment. But all these kind of statutory rules that were unique to Hong Kong, like calling the restrooms toilets instead of restrooms. It looks like they got around that finally. I noticed that in the Grizzly area, which came after my work on Hong Kong. That was all Joe Lancicero's brilliance. He did a really great job with all of the new stuff. So it looks like now they can, have fun and not have to call it toilets, and they don't have to use the sober clause anymore, which was strictly a Hong Kong region clause that we had to put on every attraction. Winnie the Pooh, you had to be sober. Every attraction you had to be sober, except now Grizzly Peak. So it looks like they finally kind of broke that.
Yeah, Tom, I went to the Science Center and they had that sign up there too. You had to be sober to enter the planetarium.
Yeah, there were some unique restrictions in that region that required us to do things that we normally wouldn't have done.
If they had that restriction at the Epcot Food and Wine Festival, there is a number of people who would not be able to go on attractions at Epcot.
Absolutely, yeah.
Other questions, comments? Oh, one thing somebody did mention that I saw in one of the queue things, a lot of giant fans for the queue area. And I was just surprised. I can imagine great if it's a hot day trying to cool it off, but I was just surprised that the electric fans were hanging in plain sight, that there wasn't any sort of theming to that. Any thoughts on that, Tom?
Yeah, now things change over time, so I don't know what the current, situation is, but at the last minute, we got kind of some feedback that over air conditioning some of the spaces when people are pent up versus moving through a space, that you might only be in a little bit. The Chinese culture does not appreciate air conditioning as much as Western culture. They appreciate it, but not the way, like in Florida, you'll get blasted with freezing cold air, and they're not as much into that. So we used fans in some places, and also the exhaust air from like PhilharMagic. So that's one spot where we used exhaust air conditioning. So it's not 60 degree or 65 degree air, which, you know, it makes me sick too. So I appreciated that. It's more like, you know, 72 degree air, which is still fine, you know, when you're out in 90 degree. By the way, I should mention that if you enjoy Florida weather, you will really enjoy Hong Kong weather, because it is hotter more days of the year, and it is usually 99% humidity most of the year. So that's why there's so much shade and covered dining and covered queue. And it's 99 inches of rain a year versus Florida's 33 inches of rain a year versus California's or LA's 13 inches a year.
Crazy. And how much more land do they have there for expansion?
I think they have quite a bit, and I'm glad that they're starting to expand beyond the berm. Without getting into the whole history, you know, of the project and everything, just suffice it to say that typically with a Disneyland project or a Walt Disney World project, you're dealing with the very healthy kind of friction between creative, business, and operations, right? And so somehow the three of those concerns tend to balance one another out and create a better product. But in Hong Kong, there were so many more entities concerned. And so if you've ever heard the term too many cooks, this would, you know, certainly be it. And, you know, it was what had to be done to get the park there in Hong Kong. But you've got the government involved, and you've got all sorts of other interests and other people that believe that they know the Hong Kong people best. So, and it's a moving target. You know, it's really hard. It's a hard thing. It's hard to predict the language preferences and all of that. And then it evolves. You know, it's already evolved over the 15 years that it's been open.
Wow, it's that long.
It's very, very challenging. But I do want to say that if anyone remember or was at Disney back in the mid to late 90s, that was the era where we were told there would be no more theme parks. We were getting out of the theme park business, and we would be doing local, regional locations like Disney Quest and ESPN zones and things like that. And this Hong Kong Disneyland grew out of what was going to originally be a location-based, 3 or 4 hour entertainment center. And it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew. And at some point it tipped and became Disneyland, but it still needed more things. And we just wanted to make sure that the skeleton and the bone structure for the park was appropriate and able to accommodate what we knew would be rapid expansion afterwards.
Right, now somebody asked a question: is Hong Kong Disney owned by Disney, or is it a partnership like Tokyo or France?
Well, it's not like Tokyo, because that is wholly owned by a Japanese corporation that Disney gets a royalty from. It's more like Paris, where Disney owns 51%. It has a 51% stake, or 49, I can't remember what it is, but, and then it's the Hong Kong government that has the other stake.
Right.
So the Hong Kong government gets a say in what goes in and what goes out, and nomenclature and all sorts of things.
Other folks, other questions, other people have been there, share their memories. Tom, the other Tom Brooks.
Yeah. So we were there just a couple years before Warren was. And what I found interesting is his perspective. and the things that he took pictures of and took note of are just so incredibly different from, from my family going there and the things that we noticed and that we saw. And I'm also like embarrassed that I didn't notice that Danny Elfman had a tribute in Mystic Manor. That's really, really cool. And because I'm a huge fan and I somehow just missed it.
Yeah, it's kind of,
Mystically missed it.
yeah, it's kind of
And-
funny because Danny Elfman and Joe Lancicero, the creative director for Hong Kong Disneyland, went to Cal Arts. Well, apparently Danny Elfman didn't officially go to Cal Arts. He went to Cal Arts.
I visited.
And they became, acquainted even back then. And I think there's some tributes to Joe in there too.
So the monkey, his little friend Albert, what he was doing, he was what was in the magic box is it was animating things. So it was turning things to life. That's what the magic was. So
Right.
every room that you go in, everything comes to life. So whether it's good or evil or musical or whatever, that was the gist of the story. But to me, there's no better attraction in all of Disney that could even comes close to Pirates of the Caribbean in Shanghai Disney. That ride is just tops them all. So I wanted to put that 2 cents in there too. But oh, and I was just going to say, I cannot believe how many new things arrived in just those 2 years, because when we were there, the castle just had a vinyl facade across it, that looked like it was a picture of the castle.
Right.
And then to see what you had, just a couple of years later and how much had been done. And then there's all sorts of new attractions, all that Marvel stuff. And I'm trying to remember, but anyway, there's just, I just like, we just thought, oh, we'll never need to go back there again. Now I don't feel that way at all. we have to go back.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I
that's
look
it.
at all of Warner's pictures. I wish the pandemic wasn't on because I have all these American airline miles just calling me.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks just to be fascinating. I really appreciate you doing this, Warner, because again, I know people that talk about the park. I've never really seen it. Of your time there, what was your favorite experience, and was there anything you were sort of disappointed in that wasn't there?
I can't say I was disappointed in anything because I was there to experience what that park had to offer, and the park had a lot to offer. I mean, I think I could have gone back another day. I would have liked to have gone back and walked to the hotels and done all that sort of stuff. But I think my brother was kind of humoring me going to the Disney park in the first place. So what did I really like? Well, I think I mentioned in the call that obviously Mystic Manor is a spectacular attraction. It would have been more fun. It would have been fun to try some more of the food there, which I had only one meal there. Didn't really feel like I got a chance to really know the park. I mean, I know Disneyland very well, even though I haven't been there since 2017. I know Walt Disney World incredibly well because we live in the Chicago area, and so that was the park where we took our kids, and that's the park where we would go to the Food and Wine Festival. And so I've spent way too many days at Walt Disney World, and so going to a park and only having one late morning and one afternoon, and then leaving at dusk. That's my big disappointment, is not having more time there.
Yeah, the only thing I saw that I was disappointed in was I got super excited when I saw the Tahitian terrace signs. And I thought there was going to be the old Tahitian terrace, a luau show or something. And it's nice that you could say the Tahitian terrace, but it wasn't the Tahitian terrace. So that was.
But if you're really interested in Disneyland archaeology, it is the very close to the original layout of the pavilion restaurant that was, that opened at Disneyland on opening day. Not exactly, but it gives you an idea of what was on that terrace at Disneyland before the Tiki Room came in and before the official Tahitian was there. And there's also some surprises in some of the trees. There's not the little leprechaun. We didn't know about that back then, but there are some surprises in some of the around some of the trees and some of the tikis that are out there. We brought some of the tiki room totems and other iconography out into that patio space.
When you were doing this, who made the decision on things like tiki birds yes or tiki birds no? You know, how did pirates yes, pirates no? Was it another one of too many cooks in the kitchen, or was it the finance guys, or how was it? Some of those.
Oh, it was, you know, because it was meant to be a smaller park, and then suddenly it was kind of growing. It did turn a little bit into, you know, a lot of cooks. They were all good cooks, but everyone had opinions about things, and it seemed to be a little bit, maybe at times, random. But I think, like, I don't know why Tiki Room wasn't in there, but, you know, it hasn't been in any of the parks after Walt. Oh no, it was at Tokyo. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Sometimes they just look at attendance, you know, how the attendance for the one at Walt Disney World has never been great. And at Disneyland, it went through a period of time where it was kind of overlooked too, but it's now, with kind of, you know, new generations rediscovering it, it's popular again. But back 15, 20 years ago, it didn't seem like a logical thing to do. Although there were some people that were in management that were saying, you know, why don't we move the one from Walt Disney World and the Bears, you know, Country Bears, and move that out there? And I thought that was, you know, an okay idea. But
Sort of like they did with the Mickey Mouse review then.
yeah, right. That was exactly the thought. But they didn't go for that. You know, we didn't have Small World there on opening day. And so I saw that through, and we added a lot. I don't know if you went on Small World, Werner, but in my opinion, it is the best Small World that we've done. It goes back, it's kind of back to the Mary Blair original. Disneyland's has migrated, you know, slowly in some areas away from the original. And you go, well, it's not necessarily important to go back to the original, but when we studied the color swatches and the original, you know, the original drawing, Disney has all the original drawings for everything they ever did. And we went back and studied that. We realized that the colors were really beautiful, beautifully vibrant, and had been, you know, maybe mismatched over time or faded over time. But we also added new scenes, you know, the Small Worlds in America, until they redid it recently, never had North America in it. And so we had to have North America represented in Small World. And then we also greatly expanded the Asian region so that we, you know, you can very specifically see mainland China and the Summer Palace, and the Temple of Heaven, and Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand. It's all very, you know, kind of distinctively laid out, as well as Hong Kong. So Hong Kong is in there too.
Well, I got a couple other questions for you. Beth Bramlett asked too. She'd like to hear more about the interactive dioramas, and do they normally have fireworks at night?
They do normally have fireworks at night, and the park is beautiful at night. The lighting, the night lighting for Hong Kong Disneyland is probably the best night lighting package for any park, certainly any park this young, because usually it takes, you know, a couple of decades to kind of build up the night lighting. But on opening day, I mean, I was inspired by Tivoli Gardens. So I wanted this place to look like Tivoli Gardens at night. So Tomorrowland is just gorgeous at night. I mean, all the Fantasy Gardens is all lit up. The Plaza Inn has Chinese lanterns in front of it outside. There's a restaurant called Festival of Foods in Fantasyland that's got all these colorful medieval lights out in front. Adventureland has flames, you know, and it's just, you know, it's gorgeous at night. And yes, they have the fireworks. And the other question that Beth asked was,
the little interactive dioramas?
Oh, those are new. So it was something that I think we were considering. You know, we knew we had to have kind of more interactive things in the park, but that was not there when we opened. It wasn't there when I left the project.
Okay,
So that's a good new addition. I really liked seeing that.
great, thanks. And then Dave English, you need to unmute yourself, Dave. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I was just as one of the people on the call that actually worked for the company and built some of the attractions, or as part of the team of folks that built the attractions. First of all, it was amazing to see what's happened, and here we are. You know, this is the year 50 years since Walt Disney World was opened, and I was part of that team. So I was there when things like the Main Street lighting that is at Disneyland with all the little twinkle, you know, the lights that are all strung around all the buildings. Well, they kept having problems with the lights burning out and the lights leaking because the technology, I mean, somebody bought off the shelf stuff. So we showed a lighting manufacturer what we wanted, that we wanted this modular stuff that could be connected together, but that it was made where it was waterproof and long life bulbs and all the rest. And today, every time I see some outdoor lighting, it's a product of that, because we basically gave them the secret sauce and told them what they needed to do, but they went out and did it, and now everybody does it. Certainly with LED technology, you can do some things in outdoor lighting that you could have never done 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to see that happen.
Yeah.
I would be remiss if I didn't share with you, it breaks my heart to know how hard we worked on the dual Country Bear Jamboree for Disneyland, after pretty much coming back from Florida, totally exhausted from doing the opening of the park. And one of the first things we did was Country Bear Jamboree at Disneyland. And to go there now and not be able to see the result of all that work because somebody decided, oh, it wasn't popular, or the same with the Mickey Mouse Revue. You can't believe how hard we worked to get that open for opening day in Walt Disney World. It's almost like, what do you mean they decided to take it out and move it? So it's for all of those on the call that are, most of us that were technologists that were able to accomplish anything of significance, it's because of the partnership with the artists. That most of my colleagues that were successful are successful as technology folks. We're part artists, we're just not very good at it. But we really appreciate beautiful, what the artist can bring. And our job as technologists is to enable the artist. So whatever work we've done, and I did in feature animation, inventions that I contributed, they were to allow somebody who had artistic skill to do things that we couldn't do before. So in Beauty and the Beast, the fact that you could have the Belle and the Beast dancing in a three-dimensional ballroom was a product of a system that we built, designed, invented, called CAPS. And CAPS was before Photoshop. And so it was all the tools of Photoshop, but before Photoshop. And Disney did that, and Disney artists took that and then took the art form to another level. So it's just, I was really blessed to be there at a time when Walt Disney World, I mean, had only been with the company for 4 years at that time. And to be in it, one of the enablers of people to install that park was just a great experience. And to see it, now through Zoom, I get to experience what the company is doing now. And
unfortunate that they did things like, the Mickey Mouse Revue, take it out and move it. I think sometimes they did it just because they didn't want to do the maintenance costs. So I'm really glad to hear Tom
Yeah.
mention that they didn't take out country bears in Florida either. I mean, it's nice that if you go to Japan, you can still see Mickey Mouse Review. But I think it left a real hole in the, well, I guess it's not even in Tokyo anymore
I
now.
think they took it out. Yeah.
Yeah, but I still think it left a tremendous hole in Florida. And just like every time I go to Disneyland, the Winnie the Pooh ride frankly sucks. I mean, I'm sorry, I hate it. I don't like it. And it's nowhere near as good as the Country Bears.
I think as Tom said, one of the things that you certainly realize being a technologist is there's not never going to be any glitz and glory for people that are doing technology in the entertainment business. I mean, you're behind the scenes and you have to, well, I always felt like I'm feeling good about what I'm doing because I know I'm doing the best I can. And I'm empowering somebody who can actually do something that people notice. Because if you've done technology right for Disney, you don't notice it. It just works. It always works. It's always perfect. And so being able to take that home at the end of the day, knowing that, you used your skills to empower the people that are actually making it happen, that's your paycheck besides getting paid. I mean, that's the thing that you're there to do. And if you've done it well, it's seamless. I'm a member of the visual effects branch of the Motion Picture Academy. If you're doing visual effects well, you don't notice them. You just believe them. And so you have to have that kind of like, that's your Oscar. Anyway, I really did enjoy the tour. I mean, it's inspiring. My wife and I had my video turned off because my grandkids were watching them today. And my 8-year-old granddaughter was fascinated by seeing Disneyland Hong Kong. And so now she wants to go there. And of course we want to go there. And if that was what was intended, Werner, you achieved your goal. And we all want to go look at your website. So when we're done with this call, we're doing
This website's great. I spend a lot of time on it. Yeah. There's a couple other Imagineers on this too. There's Brock Thoman, who's raising his hand right there, who worked on so many things, including the Fantasyland redo at Disneyland. And Rich Barnes is here, who is one of our media. I'm saying it as if I still work there.
Always in your blood.
Media technologists and worked in the show production and sound and media group. And
I have another question from somebody else, and we'll get to Brock in a second. So, Carolyn?
Oh, yeah, I was just thinking, so my background is I started working in exhibits and planetariums years ago. And everything that you're saying about the magic not being visible, I mean, the magic is there, you don't see how it worked is very true. And what I get interested in when I'm walking through any of these parks, and particularly in Hong Kong, was the audience experience and the attendee experience, the guest experience. And I noticed that in Hong Kong, once the park started to fill up again after the storm, that Small World was mobbed. You couldn't get near it. It was just mobbed. And the other rides that I hadn't seen in a long time, like the Mickey's PhilharMagic, that was mobbed. And as soon as Goofy came on, they just screamed. They just loved him. And I'm just sitting there looking at all of these thinking, what is it that attracts them that is different from why we took them out in the other parks, why the Mickey's isn't always, if it's not there or they're not going to see it, what is it that attracted the people in Hong Kong? I don't have an answer for that, but I just paid a lot of attention to what people were flocking to. The Lion King was mobbed. Those three things and the Jungle Ride. Everything else, it was sort of, you could walk in, walk off, do that. But those four things you had to wait quite a while to get into. And I would love to go back and ask people, what is it that's, I don't know how to ask that question. Why do you like this? Did you guys ever have any discussions about that, or where that comes from?
Well, at the end of the day, it's subjective. And as much as people would like to think that they have somehow scientifically come up with exactly the right, menu and offerings. At the end of the day, really, it's a guess. But we have consultants. We have people on the team who are either mainland Chinese or of Hong Kong origin. Everyone has an opinion, and while I think it's great, to empower people, everyone feels empowered to offer their opinion. So you get a lot of opinions, and you get a lot of history repeating itself. So I try to I try to laugh it off, because otherwise I'll lose more hair than I'm already, losing. But it seems like every time we've opened up an international park, we kind of go through these things where we say, people don't like ghosts or the supernatural. They won't like that in Paris because it's, very heavy Catholic, religious culture out there. They're not going to like that. And they love it, of course. And then we heard that, with Hong Kong, that we can't have anything with ghosts. We can't get people wet. People won't participate in a participation kind of a show or parade. And Japan went with that. People don't want to sit next to each other, too closely, and they don't want to get wet. But I think even on Hong Kong, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but early on, we heard that people wouldn't eat candy or cookies, that we had to only offer mooncakes. And they didn't like chocolate. And yet you go walk around Hong Kong and you see it everywhere, So people are kind of offering these opinions, that may be based on their childhood 40 years ago or 50 years ago. And it's not the case now. So, we had to kind of go through some of those hoops.
Yeah, I remember lots of discussions when we were doing Tokyo Disneyland, same sort of stuff that, oh, they're never going to react to this, or, they're going to be too staid. And I mentioned when I did my talk about Tokyo Disneyland, I'd be at work with people that were absolutely buttoned down, never saw them smile. We'd go out to Tokyo Disneyland at night and they're whooping and hollering like a 6-year-old. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
The way people act in a business setting is totally
Right.
different than the way they act otherwise. And I think some of the times people at some of the design committees didn't realize that there's a human side to some of these people, not just a business side.
Right. Absolutely. So you never really know until you open the gates. It's a very strange paradox that people are kind of the same everywhere around the globe, yet there are nuanced things that you'll run across. Maybe you do for the first couple of years need to call them toilets just to make it very clear. And then the more the audience becomes a repeat audience, the more they begin to get clued into the nomenclature and begin to discover the attractions that are maybe a little more hidden and not so obvious. I mean, I remember I was at Walt Disney World the first year, and I remember walking right onto the Haunted Mansion, but waiting like 45 minutes for the Skyway, because people saw Skyway, the rocket jets weren't there, but they were going on the things that were obvious, and the things that were kind of hidden behind. Sometimes it takes a couple of years for the word of mouth. And this happened, I saw it again on Paris, exact same thing. No line for Pirates, huge line for Treehouse.
Get to Brock in 1 second, but there's a very technical question here in the chat. What is a mooncake?
I can't. Steve, I'm going to let Steve answer that. Steve Wilson, who probably had more interaction with that.
I actually don't know what's in a mooncake, but I do remember once a year that they sell a lot of them in Hong Kong. So
yeah, the Chinese New Year, it's a big deal, but you can get them. I remember like McDonald's, you could get them, and it's a pastry. It's a type of pastry. I can't remember if I even liked it or not.
Yeah, we had some friends from Indonesia that brought us some for the New Year, and they were interesting. And thank you. I'll go back to Hostess cupcakes or something.
Yeah, it was kind of like the Chinese version of fruitcake.
Carol's
It's a not very sweet.
Right. Yeah, and that's exactly the
must-
term that we heard, was that the Chinese do not like sweets. So we're not going to have a candy shop, and we're going to gamble with the bakery, but the bakery's got to have mooncakes.
So Tom, when I was there was a big candy cart right outside of Adventureland, and that was another place that there was always a line. So
Yeah.
maybe that changed over time.
Well, we caught it. I think we caught it in time, right, Steve? I think we did open up with the candy shop, but it wasn't on the original menu when we started.
Yeah, I wanted to say, Warner, that was a great presentation, and I had not seen Hong Kong Disneyland any pictures other than I've seen like the castle from the original castle from Disneyland before they redid the one. And Tom, what I wanted to say is what a great job you did and your whole team did in pulling that park together, because I remember in the very early stages of the idea of the Hong Kong Disneyland, seeing the plans and hearing the fact that, okay, all the concessions were going to be people that were brought in, and they would, Disney wouldn't have any control like we do even at Tokyo Disneyland, as far as we have a say-so in what goes in and what doesn't go in. But it was this park, you go like, why would anybody want to go there? And then after seeing these pictures, it's like, this is a wonderful park, and I'm glad to see it was able to evolve into what it should be, not what somebody thought it might be for either more economical reasons, will make more money quickly, or, because of, like they say, what people like and don't like. Because I think that is something that happens in the parks. When you go into the park, it's a different world. And that was the intent of it, I think, in the first place. And one of the intents in Walt's mind when he did Disneyland was it was a place other than the real world. You can do anything you want there, or let yourself go there. And people do that. And so where they might not eat sweets or whatever it might be out in the real world, it's like, well, here it's a fun thing to do. Who knows? But
People feel like they have permission,
yeah, exactly,
in all of the parks. One place where the Chinese government helped, and the Chinese consultants, thank God, was early on when I inherited the project. There was no body of water in the park. There wasn't a river like a Rivers of America, or the Rivers of Adventure, as we call it there. And this was the industrial engineers and CFOs point of view that it's a waste of real estate to have a big body of water. Why have a big body of water? And nobody goes on the boats on those rivers anymore, and nobody goes to Frontierland anymore, which is why they didn't want to do Frontierland. I mean, all of these kind of notions that people had, it was their own anecdotal observation, not necessarily based in fact. Even the industrial engineer, who is supposed to be very fact driven, was allowing his anecdotal observations to kind of drive things. So there was no river. That was the first thing I saw. I was like, I just got back, they sent me, I didn't know I was going to be on this project. It was one of those get on a plane and go to Hong Kong things. The first thing you notice in Hong Kong is how important water is everywhere. Water fountains, waterfalls, ponds, lakes. It's not just an important beauty piece. It's part of the feng shui. It's part of the, the spiritual aspect of that culture. So even the banks have every important bank has some body of water or water feature in front of it. And when the Hong Kong government and the Hong Kong consultants saw this park with no water in it, and it was just, little old me trying to fight a couple of people who didn't want to put a river in there. And, what's my reason? Well, it looks good. It's pretty. It's, you got to have the kinetics with the boats and everything. Well, no one goes on the boats. Well, I went to Tokyo Disneyland and on a weekday, and and Frontierland was packed, and the riverboat was packed, and Tom Sawyer Island was packed, and everything in Frontierland was packed. So someone's observation that no one goes to Frontierland anymore might have been based on Walt Disney World, but it wasn't based on any other park. So these are the challenges that Imagineers have nowadays. Like I said, it used to just be this kind of healthy dance between the operators, finance and creative. And now there's so many people involved that
you also have the traditionalists that don't want anything changed,
And I was not that, because I believe, first of all, every castle needs to be different, in my opinion. So I was very uncomfortable with repeating Sleeping Beauty Castle, as much as I love it. But it was just my belief that that's the face of the park. That's the portrait of the park, is the castle. And so it needs to be unique for each park. I think it's a mistake in Tokyo that it's a copy of the one in Florida. And I lobbied to make the one in France different, along with Tony Baxter. So I wanted a different castle and offered to design one. And they said, no. We're going back. We have all these great drawings. This is going to be an homage to Walt, which doesn't really mean as much, in Hong Kong as it would in the United States. And eventually, look, they redid the castle. So it's tricky. It's the new world we live in.
Right. Tom Brooks, you had a question?
Yeah. Oh, I just, from last week's presentation and this week, we were talking about like how incredibly friendly the Asian community is when you're in the park, that the the employees are just smiling and waving, and they're just so happy to see you and welcome you onto the attractions and stuff. But they all had a really dark side. And if anybody did anything wrong at all, we started just noticing this all over. Like if they pulled out a selfie stick for their phone, they had a rule against that. And they would be descended upon by like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people, all of a sudden just, chewing them out, and no selfie sticks, and their faces, those happy faces, turn into these just angry, mean. And so I just thought we just started noticing that all over. It was really funny. I even took pictures and movies of the
They take their job seriously.
like you'd see somebody pull out like, get ready, here it comes, and sure enough, they'd be descended upon. And anyway, it was really funny. It's again things you notice. Different people notice different things.
Yep. Yeah, it's a great crew out there. I don't know, Werner, if you noticed or read any of their name tags, but it's kind of a funny tradition that they started at opening day, because usually they've got an indigenous Chinese name, but they're allowed to put in English any name that they want on their name tag. They get to select their names, and some of them snuck some in. Okay, but they would do some funny things. Like in the bakery, there were 2 gals that worked in there, and one was Honey and the other was Bun. Honey and Bun. And they would do, Chip and Dale, or Sonic was like one of the ride operators on the Jungle Cruise. I can't remember some of the others. Maybe Steve.
Dong, D-O-N-G.
Yeah. Oh, there were all sorts of crazy ones, and the American operator was okay with it all, and so it was kind of a fun little in-house thing to collect all the different names that you see in the park.
You might appreciate, when I worked for Disney, I would occasionally do undercover investigations of people that were supposedly stealing or embezzling or something. So I went to a meeting one day at Disneyland, and everybody, of course, wearing the name tag. And I went down to the key shop, walked in with one that was totally blank. And somebody said, well, what's with the name tag? And I said, well, you remember I'm working undercover. So I still have that as a souvenir. I'm tempted to wear it down there sometime. Dave, you had another comment or question?
Yeah, as you were talking, Tom, about making sure that the structure for the park would allow expansion. So many people, certainly most Disney people, would not know that when Walt Disney World was built, the concept was that it was going to grow. For those of us that worked on it, of course it was going to grow. I mean, you couldn't be down there and experience that at opening day and think anything else that, well, I'm an optimist. So it's like, well, of course people are going to come to this park. And so when it was designed, besides the utilidor system, which is a set of tunnels that run underneath all of the attractions and the different lands that allow supplies to be provided to the restaurants and maintenance people to come and go without having to walk through the park. There was an infrastructure put in place with plans for 9 electronic equipment rooms, basically around the satellite of the center room, which had the central control for all of the bin loop tapes and the computers and all of that. And then there was this structure that fanned out to all of those rooms. So when those rooms were, and I was part of the team that then designed that system, and each of those rooms were set out, were planned to handle 5 different attractions. And so in the case of Adventureland, you had the Tiki Room and you had the Country Bear Jamboree, but there was provision for Pirates of the Caribbean, which was installed in 1973. And yet there was room within that equipment room for the number of racks, the air conditioning was sized, and so on and so forth. So we installed the stuff for the park, opened the park. Eastern Airlines wasn't planned to happen until later. But when we left Walt Disney World, there was just like, well, I wonder if anybody will come to this park. I mean, at least that's the feeling we got from senior management, that it was a crapshoot. It was the first time that Disney had ever built a park elsewhere. And, who would want to come to Florida to go to Disneyland? Why wouldn't they go to the real place? And a lot of people at Imagineering were let go because the whole thought was, I mean, it's hard to imagine now, 50 years hence, that could have ever been the thought process. But it was for sure that they didn't, some people must not have thought that it was going to be successful, because a lot of the key people were let go. And thankfully, they had decided to expand Disneyland, build Country Bear Jamboree, put a computer system in there. And the team that worked on Florida, I mean, we had plenty to do. So, of course, it was amazingly successful. And nobody looked back. And in some sense, like, oh, you mean we let those people go? Now we need them back because we need to design Space Mountain. And we're going to transport Pirate Ride because we know what Pirate Ride is. We know where it was planned to go. So I don't know, for some of you who were with the company at that point in time, maybe you can provide a different perspective. But mine was, how can this not be successful? It's bigger, better, more beautiful. The technology is better. The sound is better. And of course it was better, and it spawned so many other things. But at the time,
Dave, if you look back at the initial year's attendance for Walt Disney World, it was dreadful. I mean, so many pictures of the park absolutely empty. I think the first 6-8 months, the numbers were way, way under projection, and they were, getting scared to death. I think they also had in mind, when you look at things, what happened with Freedomland in New York. Theme parks can not draw business and can go out of business. You had Pirates World down in Florida, which was, again, they had taken all sorts of attractions from the '64 fair, brought them down to Florida, and people just didn't go. And that park only survived because it became a big rock music festival, for quite a while. So until I think you got about 9 months into Disney World, when all of a sudden things started clicking and people were coming down, word of mouth, I think, started really helping. But the first couple months numbers of Disney World were just atrocious. Then they started doing things like Florida resident packages and senior days and, things we didn't have out here in California at that point in time, that they started making it really cheap to go to Disney World for local people, that all of a sudden, people started going. Now you look back and you say, how could you ever think it wasn't going to succeed? But you look at the number of people that were in there in January of 1972. Somebody mentioned about having the park to yourself with 3,000 people. There were days like that at Disney World that were just.
Those are the light. Those are also the light. I mean, that's why they picked October opening, because the October through March time period is less crowded. And what about Disneyland? I'm just interested.
Behind the scenes, though, what was happening was apparently was that one of the folks at a high level at Disney, who you'll recognize his name when I say it, was not a believer that Orlando was the right place for the second Disneyland, and he believed it was the Washington D.C. area, and his rationale was that there's nobody in Central Florida. There's no population base, so they're relying on this through traffic coming down from the East Coast to Miami. You're relying on people to stop. They may have already made their plans, so they're going to go they're going to see this Walt Disney World. Oh, should we go there? Well, we have reservations in Miami. And that was Card Walker. Card believed that, and he was a good soldier. You would never know, and I don't have 100% proof of this. This is some hearsay that I've got from some reliable sources, but it makes complete, total sense. Because apparently as they were finishing the park, and more executives and more Disney people were coming out, and the park's becoming more and more finished, they're also getting more and more scared, because at night it's pitch black. There's the Interstate 4 didn't even have lights on it.
In the middle of nowhere, for God's sake.
Nowhere. And they all started going, maybe this was the wrong place. And then opening day, it was only 9,000 people or so, and no one showed up, and they intentionally did it in October, so that it would be light, but they kind of thought in the back of their head, but it won't be light, it just won't be as bad. But it was light, and it was light until Thanksgiving, and then everyone showed up on Thanksgiving, and whew, and I think what you're talking about, Bill, is the energy crisis that hit afterwards. So they did really well the first year after all, but then the energy crisis came in, and I wasn't there at the time. I was just a kid, but I remember hearing about the layoffs and everything.
Well, the other thing you mentioned about night, that was a huge mistake they made for Disney World, was that, the park would close at 6 o'clock at night, and there was nothing to do for the evenings. They had no Pleasure Island. There was no nighttime stuff. You had, the show up at the top of the world at the Contemporary, but it was all pretty much, I remember going there, seeing Barbara Eden and some others. They weren't putting big rock, performance type things in. So there was no real convention business. You wouldn't bring your convention down to Disney World because it closed at 6 o'clock at night. And, there were not enough restaurants or anything on property to entertain you or do anything. A lot of snack bars, but stop and think back in 1971, how many full service restaurants at the hotels? Next to none. So until they started building out more of the things with the Disney Village and having you have some other sort of nighttime potential, people just, you brought the kids down to see Mickey, but mom and dad didn't want to go down there an awful lot. So that all made a big difference too. That was part, again, going back to Card. Card was, as you know, a very buttoned down, I don't think Card ever went to a nightclub in his life sort of guy. So it just wasn't in Card's world. It wasn't important. So.
Well, I think another thing too was that the infrastructure around Walt Disney World didn't exist. There was no community. I remember the first time I went to, I'm trying to think of the little town that had this famous little restaurant with this weird name, Billy Bob's something or other, alligator food or whatever. And you drove for, it seemed like a half an hour through the bayous kind of thing to get to suddenly this little town that had a few restaurants in it, but they were locals, had been there for years type of thing. And now if you go there, you are going through all, it's like LA,
Just like-
there's
Just
no,
like Anaheim.
yeah. The other thing I remember about, because I was there very early after it opened on my first business trip there, was the number of insects, especially at night. Which now, again, because it's taken over by housing and hotels and everything else that's out there, it's more like, living in LA or something like that, where you don't really think about bugs much. Yeah, there are bugs in the air, but I remember we were standing waiting to be checked into the apartments we were going to be staying in. It was on Disney property, and they had a bug zapper outside the check-in booth. And that thing was just zapping all the time. And every now and then it would be like, gazap! There was some huge bug hit it. And in the morning, we went back out through that gate, and below the bug zapper was a pile of ashes, probably 6 inches high and 10 inches across, from all the bugs that had been killed. And I remember also trucks going through at night, spewing out gases and stuff. They were killing all these insects, trying to keep the numbers down, and they would just drive right through the property and different, behind the scenes areas. And you didn't want to be around one of those things. I didn't want to be breathing whenever they were pumping out, but it was.
Well, as a California,
Sorry, you cut out there, Rich.
I was saying they had screened-in swimming pools.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, welcome to DDT land. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, you mentioned like there was nothing down in Florida at start, International Drive. Remember before that existed, there was nothing in terms of other places. There were shops. I mean, you went to Disney World, you went back to your hotel, and you watched TV at night. There was nothing else to do down there, and that didn't help. Baron, you had your hand up?
Yes.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
There we go. Hello, everyone. Well, let me give you my 2 cent perspective of being a Florida resident and being here when it was under construction, and going there about the first month after Magic Kingdom had opened, because I live in Fort Lauderdale, and being 3 hours away, for all of us down here being kids in high school, it was a thrill. So yeah, after the first month, when we got there, yes, it wasn't very populated. It was still opening. There were some still things that were under construction that you could see, but I think my generation at that time thought it was just the best thing in the world, because being in Florida, yeah, we had all these other things. In fact, you mentioned Pirates World, which was right down the street from me, Bill, and we had all sorts of things, but this was a magical thing. And yeah, Kissimmee was nothing. There wasn't anything around Atlanta. You're on the only international drive. I-4 was still not much. In fact, really the only way you could get there was the turnpike. And then when they opened Epcot, I was there within the month after Epcot, and it was the same thing. A lot of things under construction. I think I'd mentioned before one time that Exxon Energy was not yet open. General Motors was can't remember whatever their transportation pavilion was nice. I mean, it was sweet. But I think from a perspective as a Florida resident, as a kid at the time, we didn't care anything about what anybody else thought, particularly Card Walker. We just thought, wow, we've got Disney World in our backyard. This is great. And then, of course, when they did start with the Florida passes for Florida residents only, it really started to build. Of course, then after that, I went off to college, but it was, a few years after that in graduate school where I started going back and working on my research for Walt Disney World. But anyhow, that was just my 2 cents perspective from being a kid in Florida at the time that it was under construction, and being there shortly after.
Yeah.
Both
It had to be
of them.
amazing. It had to be amazing,
Yeah. Anyhow, that was it.
Bill, you're on mute.
I think Bill's frozen.
No, no, the dog was started barking. Somebody tapped something, it comes across on the speakers as a thump thump, and she's convinced it's the mail lady at the door, and she wants to go and say hi. So, no, I just want to say, Warner, I really appreciate your doing this today. Like I said, it was a theme park that I knew very, very little about. I've heard an awful lot about it. You can go on, Pinterest or 1,000 other things and look at pictures, but without the narrative, it's nowhere near as interesting. So I really appreciate your sharing your thoughts on it, and it makes me really, really want to go see it now. And for
Me-
Tom and the other guys that worked on it, I think you did a bang up job. One other quick question, Tom. I was joking with you on Facebook. Light standards in the middle of town square near the gazebo. How come they're not hidden like on the roofs at Warner? Can you bring that picture back of the gazebo up again?
You can try.
Okay.
I'll start getting it ready. And I'll let you know when I have it.
I think you already know what the answer to that is. It's no. Well, I'm not sure which ones you're talking about, but a couple things have happened, in the last several years, and one of them is the denuding landscape-wise of the hubs and the town squares to provide better viewing for fireworks, which is something that I don't agree with. But also, the creative entertainment group has their, requirements of having light towers and all of that. And sometimes it's a battle. And these might have been added after my time there, because I know we worked as closely as we could with them. There were some out over by the castle that we kind of moved around and got in a better position and camouflaged. I don't recall the ones in Town Square, but maybe when Werner brings this picture up, I might have a,
There you go.
Oh yeah. I know.
Yeah, it just sort of surprised me because he went to so much trouble at Disneyland to hide them on the roofs, not just be up on the roofs, but retract and everything when they're not in use. I just saw these here with the speakers, the lights, and everything. It just
they are on the roofs. They are on the roofs too.
Yeah.
These might have been added afterwards. I'll have to go back and look at my pictures that I took from that same angle. But these are some of the frustrations, sometimes they just show up.
Yeah.
Not everything goes through, the same filter like it did back in old timey days.
Yeah, I remember Tony doing a ride through the Haunted Mansion at California and just being aghast at things that Disneyland had done to change lighting levels and sound levels and all sorts of things because they thought they knew better than the designers. So
right, yeah.
Well, again, appreciate everybody doing it, and thanks, Tom, for all of your insight and input on it, and thanks for creating an absolutely beautiful park. I think it's I'm frankly blown away more than I expected to be. And I like the fact that it's familiar when you go down Main Street, but there's so many things that are new and different that that make it worth the while that you're not just going to see the same old, same old. So I do not yet know the magic presentation for next week. Again, if there's another Warner out there that would like to take us to Shanghai Disney or take us someplace else, please let me know, because this was very easy for me to do and I appreciated that. And but otherwise I will come up with something. It's the 1 year mark. Can't believe still doing it. And thank everyone for being here. By the way, don't forget Disneyland 3D coming up. Dave Bosser said nobody's asked him for 3D glasses yet, but I think it's on May 8th. We're going to be taking a look at Disneyland in 3D. So some of us already have our 3D glasses. If you don't, there's still time to get them in the mail. Go to worldsfairphotos.com/Zoom. Go down, you'll see Dave's address. And again, be sure to go to yesterland.com. And do not blame us. Oh, Jim, I just saw you mentioned. Jim, you had a question that scrolled back in the comments before we get off. What was it, Jim?
Yeah, excuse me, I'm a lot of breath. I just got delivery. That's why I was off the screen for a while. The question was on those animated things where you turn the cranks. Are they directly connected, like through a cable or something under the ground to the animation and just mechanical? Or is that crank turning something like a magneto generator, which gives power, or is it a switch to make a motor go in the animation? Because I noticed the crank and the animation are like separated far apart.
I'm guessing it's a switch,
Hmm.
but
Yeah, it was
maybe,
after Tom's
maybe,
time.
maybe Dave has a better idea because he's more technical than I am.
So if it's a switch, just the mere fact that it's turning would engage the switch. So no matter how fast the person turns it, it just knows it's being turned and the motor in the animation would turn on.
It might be a smart switch that, you
Yeah.
know, that knows your RPMs or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Would be my guess to turn it in, and I don't know if they go backwards, you can go the other way or something, but my guess is it's determining how fast the thing is being moved to then, you know, trigger the thing on the other end.
It's like you
Right.
said, the distance makes it kind of, you know, very problematic for it to be an actual mechanical.
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
I was curious how you allowed that to, I mean, it seems like it's a very one-on-one experience. You have somebody walk up, turn the crank, and then they get to do it. And it just seems like the throughput per hour isn't going to be extremely high. It's not like you can have 100 people turn the crank. It's
Well,
gonna
you got to look at it like, you know, like the tree house or the hedge maze that we have in Paris that, yeah, it's not 3,000 people an hour. It's probably 1,200 people an hour. And if you make the walkway, we learned this on the hedge maze that, you know, if you make the walkway wide enough, then people will go around and it becomes kind of self-limiting. If people want to wait in a small little short line to do the thing, they can do that, or they can go around to the next one where there may not be a line for it. So I'm guessing it does probably 1,200 people an hour, like the tree house, and the hedge maze actually does 1,500 on a busy day. So it probably, you know, maybe it costs $5 million and it gets 1,200 people an hour. That's a pretty good deal, you know, on a guest carried, the cost per guest carried per hour.
Yeah.
I had been pitching something like that for years for Disneyland Paris, an automata museum. There was this great little automata museum in London called the Mechanical Cabaret that had all of these brilliant little things. In fact, I bought many of them because you could buy them there. And we wanted to do something like that. And there was never any interest in it from operations. And so I'm kind of glad to see that, you know, I'm sure it came from feedback that there needed to be something more, you know, hands-on, interactive, you know, old school, high touch, as we call it.
Even think back to when we opened Imagineering, you know, the Imagination Pavilion, you had all this stuff, you know,
Yep.
putting your hand on, you know, the colors and sounds and all the rest of it. That was a problem that people wouldn't never step away. And at least I think with the crank thing, you see Belle dance and then, you know, she's going to keep dancing. So you move on to the next one. But, you know, Imagination, we had the problem that it was so interactive and you could do so many things that nobody wanted to go, you know, step back and let the next guy go.
Well, also, you know, the audience in Hong Kong, it tends to be more adults per child. So, you know, you'll have the mom and the pop and sometimes the grandma and the grandpa, if they're from mainland, and they have one child. And so they'll be gathered around. So, you know, not each of them is going to want to do the crank. They're going to want to watch their kid do the crank and see the reaction of the kid. So there's that dynamic that, you know, is going on there.
And you mentioned technology. It's lovely to see that ride vehicles are now not tethered to rails. Because think back to at the opening of Walt Disney World, Disney there was only one ride that Disney actually did, and that was the People Mover, not the People Mover, the Omnimover for the Haunted Mansion was the only physical ride that Disney Engineering was responsible for. There was other rides, but Aero Development had built them. So to see that now we're free of the rails. And I remember when Energy Pavilion was open for for Epcot, all of the grief that the people were going through at the time, my colleagues at Imagineering, trying to have this vehicle that would find its way through, you know, of course, the vehicle was this huge part of the audience that was moving. But today, technology, we now can position things, and there's the Luigi ride at California Adventure, where you're in this vehicle and there's no rails, it's moving around, and you're if you've never been on that ride, it's the most technology wise, it's amazing to me. How can they possibly have this and not have the cars crashed, and there's no rails? And yet I have no idea how it's done. I mean, I want to ask my friends at Imagineering, but I don't want to put them on the spot because that's secret. But to
Yeah,
see,
they would happily tell you, but then they'd have to kill you.
yeah, of course. Well, you just professionally, you just don't ask them because it's like they're not supposed to tell you.
It's exactly the same as the Energy Pavilion, just more
Yeah.
complicated.
Well,
Which is actually interesting because the first time I know about using a trackless system like that was the U.S. Pavilion at the '64 World's Fair. So you got
the
same
idea is,
a grandstand. It took off and it went off and rolled down a thing, and it would pull into a spot. A movie would go, and there were little contacts that would charge it from time to time. But then it would just go off for the next part, and the screens would come down and move and everything. But that had no track as well. So
it's difficult to do.
yeah. Well, again, thanks to everybody, and thank you again, Warner. I know you put a lot of time and effort into this, taking your 1,000 pictures down to a reasonable number. Maybe someday we'll do part 2. I know Carolyn had also been there and has some other memories. So again, thanks everybody. I will post something schedule-wise for next week, and I hope everybody has a great week, and we'll see you soon. Thanks
Bye,
all.
everyone.
Thanks, Werner. Thanks, Phil.